Stop! You violated the code of conduct. Pay the devs a fine or serve your sentence. Your altered goods are now forfeit. Then pay with your shirt.
Troops, I saw a bear here. Today's update is a lot of little changes affecting wide portions of the game, from anti-cheating measures, to better facility management, to building, to some balance issues, the whole 9 yards. So apologies in advance if this update and the footage on screen seems a bit scattered and all over the place. There's really no easy way to tackle this. But without further ado, let's get going. One of the first things you'll notice with this update is the massive changes to map legends. Bases, resource structures, and intelligence subcategories now allow you to toggle on and off individual structure types. Many facility buildings also now have their own structure icons, so you can more easily tell at a glance what type of facility is located at any given location on the map. Certain buildings like maintenance tunnels or assembly stations of various types will also now give you readouts on what upgrades or vehicles are available to be constructed at those facility buildings. All of the intelligence icons have had their sizes tweaked, so it's easier to see when you zoom in closer to the map where buildings are located in relation to each other instead of all of them overlapping each other. And, most importantly, between play sessions and between regions, whatever you choose to toggle on and off on your map legend stays that way. These settings will be stored between play sessions. And you've probably noticed by now, but rail tracks now appear on the map. There's no need to create duplicate train stations or facilities anymore. You'll now see where the trains actually connect to facilities, towns, and to each other. Plenty of map changes occurred with this update. I'll try to go over every single one of them here. 2 things have been removed from the game. One are the wooden drawbridges. They've either been retired completely or replaced with other types of bridges. The other is that nuke sites have temporarily been removed since there were far too many issues with them. So, next few wars will be nukeless. Alright, for the individual maps. For Alad's Bite, the Breath of Keltis, Harpy's Perch, and Witch's Last Flight have had their drawbridges removed. In Deadlands, Callahan's Boot has had its drawbridge replaced by a train bridge instead. The Cataroid footpath has been replaced by props. The bridge between Bryan Glen and Hope's Causeway has been replaced by a train bridge, and the Iron's End drawbridge has been removed. Pre-placed tracks in Abandoned Ward have been extended for easier access to the storage depot, and the road bridge south of the Salt Farms has been relocated out of the Rapid Decay zone. In the Lynn of Mercy, the Ulsterfall drawbridge has been removed. In the Great March, Jackboot Creek drawbridge has been removed. In Oarbreaker Isles, the drawbridge between Pollux and Castor has been removed. In Shackled Chasm, the drawbridge around Grave of Erastos has been removed. In Ashfields, a mountain has been added to the west of Mount Brimstone. In Basin Cyanak, a mountain has been added north of Cess, and as well, a mountain has been added north of Stoic. In Callum's Cape, pre-placed tracks in the Dreg and Callum's Keep have been reworked to be less obstructive in the industrial area. In Clan's Head Valley, pre-placed tracks in the King were adjusted, and some props on the south side of the town's train bridge were removed for easier connections to be made. Endless Shore has seen some pretty big changes. The mountains south of North Star have been replaced by hills that can be built on, opening up that side of the map. Another garrison house was added east of Liegehart on the south side of Saltbrook Channel. The areas around Old Jacktar and Battered Landing have had many undulating hills flattened. Many mountains and cliffs around the map have been revised to make them less climbable, and many low-lying areas have been leveled out to reduce false positive errors regarding water. For Farinac Coast, a mountain on the east side of Sickle Hill Road has been slightly shrunk. A mountain north of the Winged Walk Bridge has been widened. The mountains east of the Jade Cove Town Hall have changed and been widened. And several low-lying areas have been leveled out to reduce false positives regarding water once again. In Heartlands, the pre-placed tracks in Loftmire have been reworked and a new garrison house has been placed next to the track. In Howell County, some props were removed around the Great Warden Dam to make it so that trains don't accidentally block the rest of traffic on the dam. The mountains east of Fort Red have been expanded. In Morgan's Crossing, a mountain has been added southwest of Ultimus. In Red River, a mountain has been added to the west of Parish. In Speaking Woods, a mountain has been added to the northwest of Mute. In Stone Cradle, the Dias train bridge has been better aligned to be partnered with the road bridge, and the north side of the bridge has been widened for easier track placement. In Terminus, pre-placed tracks have been added south of Terizo and south of Cerberus Wake. In Westgate, pre-placed tracks in the Gallows have been extended for better access to the storage depot. And in Umbral Wildwood, pre-placed tracks were removed west of Thunderfoot and north of Weaver's Trail. These tracks were excessive and blocked defensive constructions. The first big change with facilities is decay mechanics and garrison supplies have been completely reworked. Garrison and bunker supplies have been replaced by maintenance supplies, which acts as an all-around supply system. That means what you put into maintenance tunnels at facilities and what you put into bunkers are the same item, maintenance supplies. They're producible at the factory, mass production factory, and materials factories. Maintenance supplies are assembled faster from a materials factory stockpile. Maintenance supplies that help to prevent decay on structures also repairs them by 1%. That way you don't have to go around the map repairing pipes or buildings or bunkers you made a week ago. As long as there's maintenance supplies, those structures will be repaired. The tunnel supply station has been converted into a maintenance tunnel, and while the name change is pretty minor, its function is much different. This enables base builders to fine-tune which structures at a base have decay prevention based on a couple of factors that you can select. Range, obviously, lengthens or shortens the range up to 100 meters of what gets maintained around your base or facility. Buildings that fall outside this range will not have decay prevented by this particular maintenance tunnel. Or structure categories. You can turn off defenses, or entrenchments, or containers, or leave them all on. It's really up to you. These maintenance tunnels can also now be built anywhere without the requirement for foundations. You'll be able to tell which structures are supplied by accessing the upgrade menu for the structure. An arrow will be drawn from the structure to the nearest maintenance tunnel, if any, that is preventing its decay. This also means that base garrison upgrades and supply surplus mechanics have been removed or altered to suit this new system. Subregions or backline territories will have a reduced cost of maintenance supplies when server performance is optimal. Less populated areas of the map, so the backlines generally cost less to maintain, but frontline areas will definitely cost more to maintain. And this modifier can be seen from the subregion tooltip on the map. Hopefully this will allow you to fine-tune your facilities and bunkers, but also prevent the issue of others stacking buildings onto your facilities, causing them to drain maintenance supplies faster. And I'm sure everyone will be happy to know that they don't need to repair bunkers after a week of them just sitting there, even if they've been supplied. Onto some bunker and facility changes. A Tier 2 version of the storage room is now available to be built. So that it'll hopefully actually be used. Fires no longer spread to faction-controlled bunkers by attaching an on-fire neutral bunker to a bunker island. No, you gotta light them on fire properly. Overhead pipelines no longer obstruct construction of some structures beneath it. And provisional roads now have an interaction menu to allow them to be demolished. Things like emplaced weapons, shippables, tracks, and train bridges now have damage models, so you'll actually be able to see how much damage they've taken. There's a new diesel power plant modification in the form of the coal power plant. As the name would suggest, it's a power plant that burns coal. 25 diesel will get you 5 megawatts, but 60 coal will also get you 5 megawatts. Whereas a petrol power plant will burn 50 petrol or 12 megawatts. So the coal is about the same level as the diesel. This just gives you an extra option when sourcing power. Several changes have been made to concrete. First off, the concrete mixer UI has been changed to accommodate concrete as a large material item, like an artillery shell or a sandbag. Concrete costs have also changed. The mixer recipe cost has increased from 10 to 20 components. However, the costs on all trench and bunkers, excluding the storage room, have been halved. Tier 3 wall has been reduced from 25 down to 15, and the Tier 3 gate has changed from 30 refined materials to 15 concrete materials. Foundations are as follows. Concrete foundation, 1 by 1, has been reduced from 15 to 5. Foundation corners, 1 by 1, has been reduced from 15 down to 5. 1 by 2s have been reduced from 20 down to 10, and 2 by 2s have been reduced from 30 down to 15. The assembly time for concrete has been reduced from 10 to 1.5 seconds, and most importantly, concrete materials are now a large item, as hinted at before, and can now be placed on pallets and shipped to the front that way. The initial cost of concrete might be more expensive, but the overall usage and usage rate has dropped significantly. And with this new concrete comes a new defensive structure, Dragon's Teeth. These are anti-tank obstacles that prevents vehicles from accessing an area, and resists most types of damage. It will take a lot to blow these things up, though they can't be placed on roads or other obstructive terrain like rocks. And keep in mind, while they will be able to stop tanks, they will act as cover for advancing enemy infantry, so there's a bit of a trade-off there. You could end up giving your enemy plenty of cover even if you deny their vehicles access to an area. A few meters of Dragon's Teeth will cost around 10 concrete materials, and unlike tank traps, these cannot be wrenched to be removed. There's been some change with the explosives. The alligator or satchel charges have been replaced by the Havoc charge and the Havoc charge detonator. These are a high-powered explosive charge that requires deployment similar to a bipod, and they are very effective at demolishing structures. First, you must place down the Havoc charge, and to complete the process, you must place down the Havoc charge detonator on top of it. Again, much like a bipod. The Havoc charge is then detonated by firing a round at it. This also gives you the advantage of being able to detonate multiple Havoc charges at a specific time instead of having to wait 5 seconds, also potentially allowing you to detonate it when passing vehicles or infantry come near it. Just be sure to place the detonator on there. If you fire at a Havoc charge without a detonator, it'll simply destroy the charge instead of exploding it. The alligator charge has been given to the Wardens as a faction-specific explosive. However, its damage has been reduced from 1500 down to 300, the explosion radius has been dropped by 70%, the deployment time has been reduced from 5 down to 1.5 seconds, crate quantity size has been increased from 5 to 10, and its basic material cost has increased from 100 to 150, but its high explosive material cost has been reduced to 80 explosive materials. The alligator charge is now the Warden's rough equivalent to the Colonial's Hydra's Whisper. The change for heavy infantry explosives means that infantry will no longer be able to simply just easily tap a base solo. Instead, you're expected to work as a team to destroy valuable structures like bases or bunkers. Speaking of tapping, that's another change. You can no longer simply tap a structure by destroying it and starting the construction process with a construction vehicle. You have to build it up fully in order for the tap to take effect, or in other words, for the inventory to be reduced. This prevents hours of work being undone by a simple tapping operation. It requires a little bit more work now. Speaking of explosives, the Tremola grenade has seen some changes. Its crate quantity size has increased from 15 to 20, the basic material cost has decreased from 150 down to 75, the explosive material cost has increased from 10 to 50, and its damage has increased from 200 to 400, while the Colonial launcher for it, the Lunaire, has had its refined material cost increase from 5 to 30. This is now a much more Colonial-centric explosive, as the Warden's Osprey grenade launcher can no longer load the Tremola grenade. And speaking of more Colonial-centric changes, the Ares super tank has had its range increased 35 to 40, though the devs did mention in the dev stream that they still would like to see future changes for this tank. The Universal Assembly Rig, or the construction vehicle, now has an upgraded older brother in the form of the BMS Fabricator. Taking a construction vehicle or a CV to the small assembly station, you can now upgrade it to the Fabricator. Previously, there was an upgrade for the tech tree in-game called Advanced Construction Tech, but now this upgrade is featured for any newly constructed BMS fabricators, allowing you to build more buildings, including trench or bunkers that require basic or concrete materials, but also allowing you to fill in up to Tier 2 trenches and Tier 2 bunker husks. Next up, for facilities, we've got the BMS Tinderbox. This railcar is also built at the small assembly station. This is a small liquid container car that is used for light gauge railways. And it's pretty straightforward. It's used for transporting any kind of liquid between facility buildings. Pretty simple, but has been highly requested. And lastly, the Wardens are getting a specialized silver hand in the form of the Lord Scar Mark 10. This is an assault tank. It's a cut-down version of a silver hand assault tank, sacrificing its top armor and protection, being open-topped, but carrying a massive 94.5mm cannon. It features a driver, gunner, engineer, and commander. This thing will pack a huge punch along tank lines. However, stranded on its own, it's going to be extremely vulnerable with that open top. As it's been a growing concern for many months now, the devs have finally taken to implementing measures that will help curb griefing and alting. Here are some of the changes that have been implemented. Vehicles that get dumped into water bodies and their contents of the inventories are restored to a nearby stockpile under certain conditions. When excessive vehicle damage is dealt to a friendly vehicle variant, players are restricted from driving for 20 minutes. Vehicle self-damage has been split into 3 classes: neutral, colonial, and warden vehicles. When a friendly vehicle variant is captured by the enemy, a message will appear in chat for your team. Significant structures being destroyed are now logged in the region events log for the faction that lost the structure. These structures include things like world bases, superstructures, logistic town structures, significant facility structures. The last driver of a vehicle is displayed in the vehicle storage's user interface. Gates will now close automatically after 10 seconds, and I'm a little sad to see this one go, but ultimately I think I understand the purpose of it. Players can no longer enter a vehicle that is occupied by an enemy. To clarify, you can still steal enemy vehicles, but there can't be an occupant inside of it. Structure event logs have been added. When you browse a structure's logs, this includes when the structure was built, upgrades started, modifications added, power lines connected, disconnected, fuel transfers, flag structures as disruptive, power switches, assembly station, build structures / vehicles, upgraded vehicles. You get the whole picture. There's a lot of things it logs now. Power station specific changes include coal cost has been reduced 60 down to 30, water cost has been reduced from 25 liters down to 1 liter. Power station sulfuric reactor modification has had its coke cost reduced from 60 to 30, and its water cost has been reduced from 25 down to 1 liter. For the coal refinery and coke furnace modifications, their production time has increased from 2 to 4.5 minutes. The coal refinery liquefier modification has had its production time increased from 2 to 4.5 minutes, and its power cost increased from 4 megawatts to 6 megawatts. Coal refinery advanced liquefier modification has had its production time increased from 3 to 6 minutes and 45 seconds, while its power costs increased from 4 megawatts up to 6 megawatts. And for the stationary coal harvester, its petrol cost has been reduced from 4 liters down to 1 liter. There's a new custom retrieval feature. When retrieving items from a stockpile, Retrieve Custom is available. With one click, you can retrieve a variable amount of items. Reserve multiple function for bunkers now allows for reserving and refreshing reservations to all trenches and bunkers in the trench network to be consistent with facility reserve multiple functionality. The reserve multiple function has also been added to trenches. Reserve multiple now impacts all connected structures, meaning connected pipelines are also affected now. Some various other changes include, and these are going to be grouped together pretty haphazardly, so bear with me. All tank MGs are now standardized to 3 styles. This follows the standardization for 7.92. These styles are Warden Light 12.7, Colonial Light 12.7, and FMG Style 12.7. These styles can be easily identified by their ammo count and sound effects. Handheld flamethrowers have had their added burning reduced from 0.2 to 0.075, meaning that handheld flamethrowers will take a little longer to set structures on fire. Storm Cannon repair costs have been reduced from 1,600 down to 500. The Intelligence Center repair cost has been reduced from 1,200 down to 500. Tier 3 wall repair costs have been reduced from 666 to 75. And Tier 3 gate repair cost has increased from 30 up to 75. Tier 3 storage room repair cost has been reduced from 200 down to 160 to be in line with the other Tier 3 bunker pieces. Tier 1 trench connectors, excavator, and repair cost has been reduced from 115 down to 90. Filling in excavation cost has been reduced from 112 down to 90. Tier 2 trench connectors, basic material, and repair cost has been reduced from 75 down to 60. The Fabry rucksack and sapper gears now reduce the weight of materials produced at facilities. Continuing on with the various changes, the O'Brien V190 Nave has had its inventory slots increased from 1 up to 25, and its inventory slots can no longer stack. This, along with other light vehicles, are no longer resistant to demolition damage either. Sandbags, barbed wire, and trench bridges on trench lines will now cost 20 basic materials in order to remove them. Snowstorms will only freeze vehicles at its highest intensities. Snowstorms cause players and vehicles to freeze much slower as well. All vehicles produced at garages or assembly stations can now be reserved if they have a stockpile entry. There's been significant bandwidth optimization for regiments and squad systems. The bandwidth has been reduced by over 90%, so logging into the game and traveling between regions should now be much less bandwidth intensive and hopefully lead to a lot fewer disconnects. The tool required for construction is now displayed in a structure's tooltip. All build sites can be placed even if you don't have the appropriate tool equipped. Excavation cost is now displayed in a structure's tooltip as well. Various train cars now have death animations when they get blown up. Track build sites can now be demolished. Reloading tripod and vehicle weapons can now be heard by players other than the ones performing the action. If an enemy's firing at you and you hear a reload, time to fix bayonet. Tripod factory modification user interface has been reorganized to be consistent across factions. Coal can now be stockpiled at refineries. The power line minimum placement distance has been greatly decreased, meaning short power lines are now more easily placeable. Signposts can now be demolished. Utility vehicles, motorcycles, and field weapons can now more consistently have multiple vehicles loaded onto a barge, making them more valuable for naval operations. Industry base tech is no longer required to construct shipyards. You can no longer climb up destroyed train bridges in one direction. The fuel container in facilities has been renamed to the liquid container. Light vehicle assembly stations has been renamed to small assembly stations, while the large vehicle factory has been renamed to the large assembly station. Structures that require foundation to be constructed now display this requirement in their tooltips. For builders, the too soon to build cooldown has been reduced from 10 down to 5. Glad to see the devs took that one out from my quality of life changes for infantry. Provisional roads now have an interaction menu to allow them to be demolished. Liquid container has been moved to the shippables category for the maintenance tunnel filter. Crane railway tracks have had their build site hitboxes improved to easily allow tracks to be built between them, or for the crane railway track to be built over existing tracks. And the coal refinery has had some minor visual improvements. Well, that was it for large portions of the update. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to see the list of bug fixes, and there are many, check out the patch notes down below. With all of these changes and fixes, what do you think will be the most important fix that devs have made this update? Leave a comment down below. And if you haven't been watching, check out the coverage I made for War 100. I put out a lot of long-form content, so I'd greatly appreciate if you took time to check that out. And as always, good luck, keep your heads down, and stay in your foxholes. Bear out.
No, do one more.
Yeah, it still pings it. It still pings it.